Hello and welcome to Communication Connection. I'm Terry Likes. This is a program that often focuses on the accomplishments of those affiliated with the Department of Communication, the faculty, students, and alumni. And for this episode, we are going to talk about a very special event that the department is putting on. It's going to be called Story State. And joining us to talk about this is an instructor of journalism, Josh Foreman. Josh, thank you so much for joining us here for Communication Connection.
Thank you for having me.
Josh, you teach journalism, you teach photography courses, you advise the student newspaper, The Reflector. You do have a lot on your plate. Last year you were involved with the planning of Story State, but this year you are the chair of that. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about your background so the audience knows who you are. And you do have a Mississippi State background, so tell us a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I was thinking about how to answer that question, and I decided I've got to go back. So my family came to Mississippi pre-Civil War days, and they were poor, they were rough, they were colorful, and they came like a lot of people who came to Mississippi for opportunity when it was basically a frontier. So I was thinking, I grew up with my granddad, who was born and raised in a place called Homewood, Mississippi, and spent his life working on the railroad and cutting trees and doing kind of hard work like that. He maybe when he was a kid would have known people who came to Mississippi around that time when Mississippi was a frontier. And I knew my granddad. So, there's a real connection there between us and those old original people who came to Mississippi. People like, let me show you a picture here. One of our great storytellers, Robert Johnson, who was one of those poor, colorful, rough people and basically invented the blues, traveling around telling his stories in his medium. So that's how I got here, the long version.
Well, great. You studied at Mississippi State. I know that you studied under one of our professors within the Department of Communication, Wendy Roussan, and now you are working on this event. You just told us a great story about yourself, and our event is called Story State. It grew out of what was formerly known, some may remember, the New Narrative Festival, which was very successful, but now it's taking a different turn. So tell us about Story State, its mission. What is its purpose?
Well, Mississippi, everyone knows Mississippi is a storytelling state, and pretty much any Mississippian can start naming off famous writers and famous musicians that came from Mississippi. So when we decided to organize Story State, we wanted to take this to the most basic level. If Mississippians are good at telling stories, then can we have some Mississippi storytellers talk to our audience and tell them how to be better storytellers? So that's kind of the simple mission that we began with, and all of the great storytellers that we have involved with the event this year are, even though they're in different mediums, they are all great storytellers and can share their insights with the audience.
Tell us a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts pertaining to Story State. When can we expect this? I know it used to be held at the Mill. This year, because of the pandemic, you're having to do some things differently. So tell us about that, Josh.
Well, at first I was kind of disappointed that we couldn't do this as a live event, but now I'm kind of excited because it's given us a chance to go and film all of our great storytellers, and we have around 15 who will be participating in the event. So all of their video presentations are going to be premiered on February 25th, 2021. And I'm kind of excited about the format because it's going to give, I think, more people a chance to hear these speakers. And it's also going to create this archive of these speakers and their insights that people are going to be going back and visiting for years to come.
Well, you mentioned this great lineup of speakers, nearly 15, so I'm excited now. Tell us about this lineup. Who might we expect to see and hear from?
Well, I'll talk about a few. We've got you can't have a storytelling event in Mississippi without getting a blues man in there. So we got Dwayne Burnside, who is a hill country blues man. And this is the kind of guy who's telling stories at that base level. He's a master of his musical genre, and he's the son of R.L. Burnside, who's one of the most legendary bluesmen ever. And I got to go and talk to him in Holly Springs, and I've listened to him play live several times. He's played with the Mississippi All-Stars for many years. So that was a fantastic experience for me, just getting to sit down and talk with him. Of course, you have to have a writer when you talk about storytelling in Mississippi. So we got Ryan Starrett, who is one of my oldest friends. He grew up with me in the Jackson area, and he is a narrative history writer. So he's written several books about Mississippi and New Orleans, and he's got a book that I actually co-wrote with him about Dallas that's coming out, and he knows how to tell those historical stories as if they were fiction and grab the reader with those literary techniques. So that's Ryan. And then we've got one of the biggest, most successful PR professionals in the state, Rick Lucer. He created the Mississippi Believe It campaign, which is very well known in the state. It's been around for years, and basically just single-handedly elevated the entire profile of the state of Mississippi by, basically defying all of the stereotypes that people have about Mississippi and highlighting all the great people who have come from here and all the ideas and athletes and storytellers. And then we're going to have a roundtable discussion with a group of winemakers and a brewer from Starkville. So we've got Paul Summers in Virginia, who makes the wine at Knight's Gambit Vineyard, and he's going to be joining the roundtable along with the brewers from Mayhew Junction here in Starkville, and someone who's actually involved with a champagne company in Paris. So that person will be joining us from Paris virtually. So those are just a few. We've got Anna Wolf, who's probably the best investigative reporter in the state, and still have about 8 or 10 more after that. So it's a great lineup.
That is a great lineup. Josh, thank you for sharing and giving us a tease, if you will, about who we might expect in the month of February regarding Story State. And what some may not realize is, in our everyday life, storytelling is part of what we do. I know in the Department of Communication, we are communicators. We teach aspiring writers and theatrical performers and journalists and so forth. But as children, we grew up with bedtime stories, many of us, and so it's really ingrained in what we do, storytelling, and that's the heart of what Story State is all about, isn't it?
Absolutely. You have in journalism, we learn that inverted pyramid, and you give the most important facts, and that's really important, and that's a really good skill to have. But when you start looking at the Pulitzer Prize winners and those people who are famous for their journalism, what they've learned to do is take it to that next level and start telling stories. And they've mastered those narrative techniques that novelists have mastered, 100 years ago. So I think storytelling is something that we as Mississippians do naturally, but it's also something that we can do intentionally. And if you tune into Story State, we've got all those storytellers who are very knowledgeable in their individual fields who are going to tell us how to intentionally tell stories in whatever medium we choose.
And one little sidebar of Story State is you've created a storytelling competition for students, and that's not just for those at Mississippi State, but any Mississippi college or university. So tell us a little bit about how the students are going to get involved in this.
So it's an undergraduate competition, and we have invited anyone who's at any college in Mississippi as an undergraduate to make a short film or a podcast or write a piece of nonfiction and submit those to our storytelling contest. So it could be something that you've already produced, or it could be something that you produce just for the contest, but we're going to be judging those and awarding cash prizes for the best submissions we receive. And the deadline on those is going to be February 8th.
Okay, Josh, so you've mentioned the date or the deadline for that and the date for Story State, but give us a little bit more. How can people see and hear some of these speakers? How can we partake in this event?
Well, the portal to Story State this year is going to be our website. It's really easy to find. It's storystate.msstate.edu. And from there, you can see contests, where to submit. You can see our lineup. And then on the actual day of the event, that's where you will see our actual program premiere. So we're going to host it on YouTube, but you'll be able to get to it right there from the Story State website. And that's also where we're going to archive all of our presentations, so that if you can't see the event on February 25th, you could go back and watch it anytime you want.
Well, I would be remiss, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, at least give you the chance to talk about that. If anyone would like to sponsor or play a role in Story State in a small or a large way, how might they inquire about that?
Yeah, the Story State website, storystate.msstate.edu, has a little button, and it's really easy. You can go to that website, click that button, and it'll tell you everything you need to do to become a sponsor. And one of the great things about Story State is not only are we asking people to come and share their insights with our audience, but because we've had sponsors, we're able to kind of take some of the money that we have for the event and give that back to these storytellers who are participating in the event in the form of honorariums. So that to me is one of the most fulfilling parts of this, that we not only get to hear from these people, but also get to support them a little bit.
Well, Josh, and I know that this event is free to the public, and it's not just for those at Mississippi State University. It's for anyone around the area, around the state, or even around the world, since it's going to be a virtual event. So it's free, but I do know you would like to have people register for this event, so I know they can do that on the website. So Story State coming up in February. You can go to the website, as Josh mentioned. Josh Foreman, thank you so much for joining us from the Department of Communication. We wish you all the success. We appreciate it. And we hope that you will attend Story State, and we certainly hope that you will join us here next time here on Communication Connection. I'm Terry Likes. Thanks for joining us.